To be honest, is the pod going up? To be honest, sit down, we need to have a talk. Cornelius gon' make a point that the others don't. Them other shows sound the same, come escape the box. Expand your mind, dig into no controversial topics. He ain't scared to keep it real. Tune into this podcast, but don't be in your feelings. We gon' have a laugh, we gon' talk about some pain. Let's talk about the present situation of today. To be honest, is this the podcast? I need to tune in right now.
Yo, what's up, to be honest? Yo, this your boy Cornelius, Lindsey. I am back with another episode, and I am, my intention today is I had a guest that was lined up to be with me, but instead I'm postponing that so I can be able to just kind of talk to you, have an honest, I guess it's not a dialogue since y'all ain't talking back to me, but have an honest monologue with you. But before I get into that, I do want to say, if you are in these areas in this upcoming month and a half, I'd love for you to come out, come kick it with me, come out to one of the events. So I want to be in, I think it's Centralia, Illinois, at City Hope Church on Wednesday, June the 2nd. On Sunday, June 13th, I'll be at Word Alive Church in Lawton, Oklahoma. Sunday, July 18th, I'll be at Piedmont Chapel Church that is in Greensboro, North Carolina. And Sunday, July 25th, I will be at the Encounter Place in Macomb, Mississippi. So if you're out there and you say, hey, I would love to get me to come and speak at one of your events. So you want to get me on your podcast, you want to, whatever it is you got, you can always email my team at requestcornelius@gmail.com. Again, that is requestcornelius@gmail.com. But I'd love to see you in any of those four places. Other dates are forthcoming. I've had people who've y'all hit me. You're like, yo, I don't know if you're still speaking, what you doing. And so I figured I'm going to just start letting y'all know from right here. But anyway, this is To Be Honest. And I feel like we really have not had an honest conversation here lately. So I figure it's a great time to have one. And this is my vulnerable moment. Okay. So about 2 weeks ago, I had an awesome opportunity to host a retreat in Wyoming with some pastors and other, I would say, high capacity, high level leaders. And this is something that I've grown to really enjoy doing. I feel like for the rest of my life, I want to be a support for pastors, or I want to be a support for high level leaders, whether it's business executives, whether it is, high influencers, principals. You kind of police officers. I want to be a support for the leaders in our community, for politicians. I also want to be that man who is known at the end of my life for holding up the heads of men. Especially those men whose their head is fallen because maybe they've fallen into disgrace, or they've fallen into this thing, whatever it may be. I want to be able to go to them and have them to recognize that, hey, yo, I want you to realize something. You are human, and that while you did what you did, that is not who you are. And you don't have to stay in that place. We can move forward. So I want to be that guy that kind of gets get my hands really dirty and just kind of be in the mix of a lot of different things. And so, but anyway, I was on this retreat in Wyoming, and one of the days, one of the guys one of the guides was like, hey, we should climb this mountain. Now I live in Georgia. I kind of live in Georgia, but the altitude of where I live is much lower than where I was in Wyoming. And then he was talking about, we're going to climb this mountain, but you got to think, we're going almost 9,000 feet in the air. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this is going to be crazy. But anyway, I'm a daredevil. I like doing stuff like that. And plus I like working out, and I hadn't worked out that day, and I needed to work out. So we got out there and we started climbing this mountain. And I got to tell y'all, like, when you think climbing a mountain, you may think like, oh, what he was doing was he was just kind of walking up a trail. The guy was like, yo, it's a trail, but it wasn't no trail. We were scaling the side of a mountain. When I say scaling, I mean, I want you to picture you're bear crawling, up a slanted wall. almost. And we had like sage bushes that were like catching us before we fell to our death behind us without a rope or anything on behind us. But it was an amazing experience. And I'm climbing the mountain, and I realized something, that as I'm going towards the top of it, I am just exhausted. I'm tired, and rightfully so, right? I'm exhausted and I'm tired because as I'm going up, the higher I get, the less restrictive my oxygen is. So I can't breathe like I normally would. Not only that, but my body is aching all over, even though, I work out. I love to work out. If you haven't heard of my Outlast 30 program, I would encourage you to. You can go on Instagram, go to Outlast 30 program. It's at Outlast 30 program. You can also go to outlast30.com. But anyway, I love to work out. I believe in it, but my body was aching all over. That morning, I did this crazy thing of doing burpees and sit-ups and all that kind of stuff. So my legs are hurting, my hip is hurting, my knees are hurting, my arms are hurting, and I'm not even halfway up this mountain yet. And there were some times where going up the mountain, I had to take a rest. Like I would sit down, I would rest, but it was just this part of my ego that was saying, you got to get to the top of it. You got to get to the top of it. Like there's no way you can turn around now. There's no way you can look back and say, well, I got this far and I didn't make it. There's no way you can go back down to the bottom. And when everybody says, did you climb it? And you can't look at them. You cannot look at them in their face and say, no, I didn't climb it. No, I didn't do it. No, I didn't do it. So, I'm going up the side of this mountain. And I am petrified on one side because I'm like, I could easily fall back and I will fall to my death. But I'm also hopeful because each step I know that I'm getting closer and closer to the top. Not only that, but I was very thankful because I had brothers who were climbing the mountain alongside me, so that when I was tired, I had guys who were saying, come on, Cornelius, let's keep going. And when they were tired, I was able to encourage them, which then created this great leverage between the two of us that got us to where we ultimately needed to be. Finally, after almost an hour, I get to the top of this mountain. And as I get up at the top of it, it's absolutely gorgeous. I'm looking at all the other mountain peaks that surround me. I'm able to look down in the valley where we're staying and the house, the retreat, the ranch space that we're living in, which is, massive. When you're up close to it, when you look down, it's small. The horses, they look like ants. The people, they look like ants. And the whole time you really start to ask yourself, you really start to think to yourself, like, what in the heck, what drives us to get to the top of this? And I kind of mentioned it earlier, but it's that ego. And as I got up to the top of that mountain, I realized that that's been much of my life. I'm 34 years old right now. This year I'll be 35. And one thing that I realized is that for the past, I would say 33 and a half, maybe 33 and a quarter years of my life, I have sought to climb the first mountain. And that first mountain that I believe is that first mountain that we climb and is fueled by ego. Let me get to the top of the mountain. Let me see what I can get when I get up there. Let me see what I can have when I can get up there. I thought living in a $1 million house would somehow bring me fulfillment. That didn't do it. I thought, well, if I get married, I have kids. I thought, well, maybe that'll give me a sense of fulfillment. And it's like, that really didn't do it. And I'm continuing to achieve, being able to self-publish 14 books in 6.5 years. I look back and people say, well, how in the world do you have time to do it? And for me, it was all about just climbing that mountain, because just like I was when I climbed the mountain in Wyoming, there was no way that I felt like I can get to the top of the mountain and then quit. Or there was no way I felt like I can get halfway in the mountain and say, halfway up the mountain and say, well, I didn't finish the rest of the way. I didn't want to turn around and say that I did not calculate the cost of what I was going to do. And because I didn't calculate the cost, then somehow I didn't reach it. But in much of my life, I feel like I kind of got to that place, that top of the mountain, And I never forget, I was sitting in my therapist's office, and we just started having a very great conversation about happiness and about fulfillment and about all those different things. And And I remember asking him, I was like, dude, do you feel like I'm going through a quarter of a life crisis? Because there's nothing in my life that really fulfills me anymore. And I want you to really understand, like, the basis where I'm coming from, and in no way am I being ungrateful. I have lived thus far. I have lived an amazing life, and in no way in this am I saying that I'm ungrateful, that I hate everything I've done, or that I have regrets, because I don't. But when I say there's nothing that really excites me anymore, it's like, I look at my therapist and I say, I know what it's like to live. I know what it's like to sleep in a at a hotel or a motel that's $100 a night. I mean, heck, I know what it's like to stay in a motel that's $10 a night. I also know what it's like to stay at a hotel that's $1,000 a night or $10,000 a night. I know what it's like to fly on commercial planes. I also know what it's like to fly on private planes. I know what it's like to sleep in a double wide trailer, which is, what I grew up in. I also know what it's like to sleep in $1 million house, multi-million-dollar house. I know what it's like. I know what it's like to, walk on the black sanded beaches. It's like all these things, all these experiences that I've been able to have, that I've been privileged to have, and I would say due to a great deal of hard work. But I know what it's like, to ride the camels in Dubai. I know what it's like to, pet the elephants in Bali. It's like I know what it's like, to walk down Oxford Street in London. I know what it's like to stand on a stage with 10,000 people in front of you, and you're the main person to speak. There's a lot of things that I never thought. A country boy, I was born in a little small town in Mississippi, Newton, Mississippi. These things that, while I may be mentioning to you, these are things that maybe you say, well, I've done all those things. It's not anything big. But for me, a country nappy-headed boy from Newton, Mississippi, growing up in a double-wide trailer with a pond out back that was stocked full of catfish that I went out and I caught, and I would cut skin and clean and fillet and take in the house for my mom to fry. I never thought that any of those things were possible for me. But that still didn't stop me from working hard to get to the top of the mountain. But then to get to the top of the mountain, to then ask yourself the question, is this it? Is this everything we're going for to get to the top of the mountain? Is this everything that we're after to get to the top of this mountain? And you would think, seriously, you'd really take time to really ask yourself the question, okay, if getting at the top of the mountain was the epitome, what was the pinnacle of happiness and success, then people who get up there are people who we suppose would get up there, that they would always be happy. That's not the case. Some of the most successful people I've always known, even from the outside, were quote unquote successful. They had the money, they had the houses, they had the cars, but they still committed suicide. It's interesting when they were talking about the opiate outbreak in Georgia. I believe they called it like the opiate triangle. And if you looked at many of those zip codes that were in that opiate triangle where a great deal of opiates were being used, it was some of those zip codes were the home of some of the multi-million-dollar houses. These weren't, this wasn't the ghetto or the trailer park as one would be led to believe. These are people who had means. These are people who could travel the world and go where they wanted to and buy what they wanted, but yet it did not fulfill them. And so if getting at the top of the mountain is, if that's the big thing, then it should fulfill us. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because our society is so big right now and saying, you got to get the bag, get the bag, get the bag. And I've been talking about soul care and getting your soul right and getting you right and get everything aligned. I'm talking about soul care. I'm talking about getting everything aligned, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, getting all those things aligned in the right way, because our society is all about, segregating and segmenting them. Get your physicality over here, get your spirituality over here. When you wake up in the morning, pray, seek God first and then kind of put him on the shelf. Then when you get done, go to work and then get your work done. Then you get off work, then you work your business. Then you get off your business, then you go and you possibly have a family. So now we've even gotten to the point in our society where we don't even talk about family anymore. And I'm concerned in the generations that are coming up, if we're going to still even have a family, have a familiar structure. Like people nowadays are like, I don't even want to have kids. They're saying, you know, my dog is my child, or I'm having a plant instead. And we're wondering, like, you know, we laugh about it, but as we get older, if we don't have children that are being born, then that means there are legacies and dynasties that are ultimately dying. And if those legacies and dynasties are dying and less children, that means that we're going to have less production. And if we have less production, less people, that means the economy drops, because you don't have many people who are either working to create, because now there are vacancies, or we don't have many people who are going to spend in order to stimulate an economy. But anyway, I digress. I get to the top. And I realized that at the top of this mountain, as great as it is to be up there, I can barely breathe. As I look around, I see these great views, but the air up there is so thin that I can barely breathe. And oftentimes, there was a point in my life where when I told my therapist I feel like I'm at a quarter of a life crisis, I felt like that's where I was. I was at a place where I just could not breathe. And it was something interesting that I did all that work to get to the top of the mountain. Here's the crazy thing. When I got up there to the top of the mountain, I didn't even think about all the hell that I went through to get up there. Then I finally said, okay, I'm going to journey back down this mountain. I'm going to pick this up. And as I journey back down this mountain, you know, my goal as I go back down the mountain is to really just kind of take in the journey, taking everything that I went through in order to get to the top. And as I got back down to the bottom, I got back in the valley, and it was like, okay, I was able to breathe. I was around brothers who were there to encourage me, and we could laugh and joke and all those different things, which was absolutely amazing because it was exactly what I needed. But that was at the bottom of the mountain. That was in the valley. Everybody wants to get to that top. Everybody wants to get to that mountaintop. I'm telling you something. You get up there, and that's not where fulfillment is found. But then I something else hit me, and so I had an opportunity to sit down with an older gentleman who has done extremely, extremely well in his life. Extremely well in his life. And I mean, he's, if I would probably say his name, you know, many people out there probably know who he is. But he was just telling me how he's done all these things in his life. He's made a ton of money. I mean, live in some of the biggest houses that, I mean, he's talking about his properties. I was just like, golly, you know, he's done all these things. And he's like, yeah, all those things, none of those things work for me anymore. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, listen, Cornelius, he said, I climbed the first mountain. First mountain in my life, I climbed it. Only to realize when I got up at the top of it, you know, the air is so thin, you can barely breathe. And I just think that, you know, in that ability being barely to breathe, that you don't even think straight, then it begins to destroy you because you think you got to stay at the top of that mountain. And he said, you know, being at the top of it, it destroyed me. I got into a lot of things that ultimately destroyed me, destroyed his family, everything else. Then he talked about being in that very awkward place of kind of being back in the valley. But he said, Cornelius, he said, you and I, we're climbing a second mountain. And that's what I'm getting to for you right now. He said, we're climbing a second mountain, but the difference between the first mountain and the second mountain, the first mountain is a mountain that is driven by ego. The second mountain, in my opinion, is a mountain that's driven by brokenness. Because you get to the top and you realize this doesn't fill me up anymore. So then you realize I need to not only get to the top of this second mountain, but in order for me to get up here, I need to enjoy my journey up. And so my encouragement will be for you that as you are, you know, in your life, you're trying to build, you're trying to grow, you're trying to you're trying to get the bag. You're trying to be the business owner. You're trying to make the million. You're trying to buy mama the house. You're trying to do all. You're trying to have a better life for your kids and get it. I understand it. I get it. But to be honest with you, you can do all of that stuff and it still won't fulfill you. Because you look around, and if you're in a 10,000 square foot house, 20,000 square foot house, if nobody else is in that house, it's just a cold house. You got a lot of rooms, but ain't nobody else in them. My wife and I, we realized something. We just looked at each other. We thought, you know what? We got all this space, but we don't even use it. I don't even think we even like it. Much of it, we felt like when I was pastoring, I always wanted to have space so that I can be able to house people if they need it, whatever it may be. But we just took in our lives now. We're just like, we don't even use all of this. Like we don't need it. We don't need it. Like, it's like you assume that this is the pinnacle. This is the place where you're getting to in life. And you finally realize like, I don't need that. Like, I'm not trying to impress anybody else. I'm not trying to be bigger than what I am. Like I don't need that anymore. I don't need to live for anybody else's applause. I don't need to live for anybody else's accolades. I don't need to live for anybody else's anything. Like I'm fine. So now in the climbing of the second mountain, it's like, okay, the brokenness becomes the leader. It's like, okay, God is literally taking you by your hand and saying, I'm taking you up this second mountain. Like that was the mountain you climbed out of your ego. And I allowed for you to climb it because I needed for you to see, child, that that's not what you wanted. I know you thought that's what you wanted, but it's not what you wanted. And here's the other thing. It's definitely not what you needed. You thought you wanted it, but you didn't really need it. You didn't really want that. Then you finally get to the top and you realize that wasn't it. So now, son, I'm taking you by your hand. Daughter, I'm taking you by your hand and I'm taking you up the second mountain. And when you get up there to that second mountain, I want you to realize something. That the journey that you took to get up there was a different one. Because now your goal isn't to have the big house. Your goal isn't to have the nicest car. Your goal isn't to be somebody important. Your goal isn't to have great titles. Your goal isn't to have major influence or to be popular, to do all that bull crap. It's like your goal now at the top of the other mountain is to just have good soul care, to have everything properly aligned. Like I look and I say, okay, my family's healthy. I look and I say, okay, my finances, they're healthy. I look and I say, okay, I look at my friends, I say my friendships, they're healthy. These things around me are healthy. That I'm not giving up something else at the expense of this. So I'm just saying to y'all, like legit, take some time, really think about your life. Just take a moment, really look at your life and ask yourself, like, where the heck am I going? I mean, really even ask yourself the question, like, do I even like what I'm doing? And why am I doing it? Am I just doing it just for the simple fact that I think if I do this, I'm going to get something out of it? Because if that's the case, don't do it. But I just needed to come on here real quick and just tell y'all that. I'm like climbing my second mountain. And I feel like that second mountain is so important. I don't feel like we talk about it enough, and that's because I don't feel like we can really, I feel like many people can really articulate the words that goes along with it. One thing I've realized though, y'all, is that there are a lot of people out here right now who are so unfulfilled. It's like this feeling, it's like a shared feeling that we just don't talk about, we're very mute about, where it's like, I just feel lost and I feel very anxious. I'm telling y'all, man, I think it's going to be good for us to climb that second mountain. And pray if we can climb that mountain together, but let brokenness lead the way. Because that brokenness is going to bring out the empathy. That brokenness is going to bring out the love. That brokenness will bring out the grace, the mercy, all those things that are needed. Not just for you at the top of it, for the others who you'll take along with you. Hey, y'all know I love you. Make sure y'all share this with somebody else. I'm going to be back next week like I always am. Preferably with my guest. But no, I love y'all, all right? I love y'all. Intro deuces. I'm out. Love you.